안녕하십니까 톰님 인사 부탁드립니다.
반갑습니다. 와인 마시는 톰 이준혁입니다.
저도 그렇고 왜 이렇게 다 피곤하죠?
Are you tired?
It's okay. Okay. I have champagne.
샴페인서울이 끝나고 이제 금요일날 메인 행사 끝나고 오늘 일요일 아침입니다. 제가 피터 형하고 어제 새벽 한 2시까지 또 마시고 힘들어 죽을 것 같았습니다.
그래도 소개는 해드려야죠. 구독자 여러분들에게.
인터뷰는 해야죠. 저희 피터 형이 저에게는 샴페인의 멘토 같은 분이세요. 샴페인에 대해서 많이 알려주시고 2014년에 처음 만났으니까 저하고 이제 뭐 한 12년 됐는데 많이 가르쳐주고 많이 뭐 한국에도 제가 처음 초대를 하게 됐고 그리고 피터가 이제 사실은 뭐 NM보다는 RM들을 전 세계에 알리면서 직접 집들을 찾아다니면서 그 생산자들을 소개하면서 굉장히 이제 뭐 좋은 평가를 받게 된 케이스입니다. Okay, Peter, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Could you start by briefly introducing yourself?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here too. My name is Peter Liem. I am a wine writer and wine educator. I'm a specialist in Champagne, and so I live in the Champagne region. And I host Champagne events around the world, most notably La Fête du Champagne, which I started together with my friend Daniel Jonas. And of course now we do 샴페인서울 together here as a partner event to La Fête du Champagne.
Okay, when did your journey with wine begin, and what made you fall in love with champagne?
So I began working with wine about 30 years ago. It was directly out of university. My first job was at a wine store, and I loved it. So I started my career in wine retail. I became a sommelier. I worked all aspects of the wine trade, importing, distribution, restaurants, retail. But since 2004, I've been a wine writer. I guess my journey to Champagne began quite early. Of course, in the past, working in the wine trade, I worked with the wines of the world. But I started going to Champagne quite early in my wine career. The first time that I went to Champagne was in 1996. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, the world of Champagne was changing quite rapidly. In the consumer realm, our attitudes towards Champagne were beginning to shift, but in Champagne itself, there were big changes going on. And that made me very interested in the culture of Champagne and the region of Champagne, and that made me want to keep going back. So it was a very dynamic time in Champagne, and I think that's what drew me into it.
Tell us about the La Fête du Champagne, which later inspired 샴페인서울.
So La Fête du Champagne, we started this in 2014. It was my friend Daniel Jonas and I. We had both been thinking independently about doing a big champagne event in the United States. And so we were old friends. We had met in Burgundy in the 90s. And so we began talking to each other, and we thought, oh, maybe let's partner up and create an event together. And at the time, of course, there were champagne events around the world, but they were narrower in scope, I think. Either people would be promoting champagne in a very traditional way, so promoting champagne houses, which is great, or else there was kind of a newer movement where people would just promote growers. So there would be like grower champagne events, and we didn't really want to do either of those things because we felt that Champagne isn't about houses or growers or co-ops. Champagne is a much larger world. And for me, the divide was never between champagne houses and champagne growers. It was between good champagne and mediocre champagne, right? So I wanted to promote good champagne, no matter who makes it. and so we were actually the first event in the world where houses and growers could stand together in the same room, pouring top quality champagnes. And also, what was really important for us with our event was that we would have we've had principal representatives from the houses. So either the winemaker or the chef de cave, or the grower himself or herself. So it was in 2014 it was the first time where you could come in and there would be like Olivier Krug pouring Krug, and next to Raphaël Barèche pouring Barèche, and and Jean-Baptiste Lecaillon pouring Cristal, and Fred Savard pouring Savard, and then nobody had ever seen this before, and so it was a really unique atmosphere. So from the beginning, it was a great success, and we started in New York, and so we've been doing it every year since, and taking it to different cities.
I was there.
I know you were there. It was fun.
You first visited Korea in 2016 and have returned several times since. How do you see the Korean wine market today?
Yeah, 2016 seems so long ago now.
It's over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I always love coming to Korea. It's great. I think that what's impressive about Korea is there's a really dynamic collection of consumers here. People are very eager to learn more and to experience more. And even now, I think, we can say that globally champagne sales are maybe going a little bit slowly, but I think Korea is still one of the only markets where sales are continuing to rise, and that's really impressive.
Not an easy market.
Yeah, I understand. It's a smaller market, of course, but it's growing, and it's a very energetic market, and I think you can see that also with the attitudes of the producers. When producers come here, they're very excited to work the market. They're very excited to engage with consumers here, and that reflects well on Korea.
You are also known to love Korean cuisine. Which dish do you enjoy, and which champagne pair well with them?
Well, I think the beauty of champagne is its diversity, right? So you can find a champagne to pair with almost anything.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the spiciest food, maybe that's a problem, right? But excluding that, you could find let's say with kanjangaejang, right? Okay. So I think with something soy sauce based, I think like a blanc de blanc, or even like meunier, or something like you can find something on the lighter side that can pair with that. But then if you're doing like kalbi or like bulgogi, a big Pinot Noir based champagne would there's no reason why that wouldn't go well. So you can find a lot of different styles of champagne to pair with Korean food. And I think Korean food, Asian food in general, there's so much umami. And this pairs so well with champagne because with lees aging, and then also with chalky soils, there's so much umami in champagne. So it's almost even a more natural match, I think, here in Asia than it is even with French food, honestly.
Okay, yesterday we talked about this issue. Like Burgundy, does the champagne also express terroir?
This is always the question, right? Yeah. Because historically, champagne has been known as a blended wine, and so there's a misconception among champagne consumers that, well, if you're blending all these terroirs together, then you're not really expressing a place, right? And I think this is not true. But it's a complicated issue because you can express terroir in different ways. We think that, especially because we're trained in Burgundy, we think that we tend to focus on terroir as an expression of a single vineyard. And this is true. I mean, that's valid, but that's not the only expression of terroir. So you can express terroir on a very large scale, right? So, for example, a blended champagne being blended from all over the region of Champagne, this is still an expression of terroir because it's an expression of Champagne. It's different. It's a different expression than, say, Franciacorta or Tasmania or the Anderson Valley. You feel something different for something very particular that makes it Champagne. That's terroir expression, right? You can get smaller, so you can say a region in Champagne. So a blended Montagne de Reims versus a blended Côte de Blanc, you can tell that these are very different things, right? That's, again, terroir expression. Then you can get smaller, even, and say, within the Côte de Blanc, like Cremant versus Le Mesnil. These are two very, very different expressions. And then, of course, you can get smaller than that and say, within Cremant, you can get single vineyards, like Bouzon will taste different, than Le Bateau. which will taste different from Goutte d'Or. And so then that's a very Burgundian type of expression, where it's so I see these as like concentric circles where all of these are valid expressions of terroir. In a well-crafted champagne blend, terroir is still very important because it is what gives the wine its character.
Cheers.
Cheers.
How is climate change affecting champagne? Has it changed the style of the wines?
Okay, let's face it, like everywhere in the wine world, or even just the world in general, climate change is the biggest issue in Champagne right now. Because historically, Champagne has been a marginal region, right? It's been historically, you can say that Champagne has been at the limits of wine growing in France, the very northern limits. So Champagne has always been a very cool climate region. And I think in these kind of cool climate regions where, like Champagne or like the Moselle Valley or like, things that exist on the margins, you feel the effects faster of climate change.
Okay.
And so in the last 20 years, we've seen the climate change dramatically in the Champagne region.
Okay.
And you can say that some of the effects have been positive, right? Vintages are more regular. They're more consistent now. You can say that there are no more bad vintages, right? There might be vintages you like and vintages that you don't. But for example, recently, like, what do we think of as a poor vintage in Champagne, right? 2021, let's say, was not considered to be a great vintage. But 2021 is like, they're delicious, right? And there are many successful wines made in that vintage. If 2021 had happened 30 or 40 years ago, it would be considered a very, very good vintage, right?
Yeah, right.
And so,
okay.
so it's only in relation to vintages around it that we think that 21 is poor, but it's not, right? Like, if you think about poor vintages of the past, even just, let's say, 20 years ago, so like 2001, right? 2001 was not considered a very good vintage. And yeah, we struggled more, right? If you go back in the past, like say 1984, or like 1972, like these vintages don't happen anymore, right? A vintage where it's really catastrophic, right? It doesn't happen anymore. Because of climate change, it's more consistent, and two, because of like the know-how of wine producers is greater, so they know how to handle more difficult vintages. Viticulture is better, winemaking is better, but climate change has also affected the style of the wines very dramatically. So certainly today, Champagne is riper, not only because of the climate. It is riper because of the climate, but it's also riper because winemakers, wine growers are seeking riper grapes, right? So there are two different things going on. But with climate change, we certainly see higher ripeness, lower acidity, higher alcohol in wines. And so when you get extreme vintages like 2022, this is challenging because you have this climate that's pushing your alcohol levels higher, sugar levels are higher, acidity is falling, and then that creates questions for wine growers, and it's a different set of questions than 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, and the question of the future is, how do we deal with things like this? It presents a new set of challenges for wine growers. I don't think that the answer is to find different grape varieties or to make still wine, or I think we can still make champagne with the grape varieties that we have. But wine growers have to adapt, right? We can still make very high quality champagne, but it's going to be very different than the champagne of the last 20, 30 years, it's going to be, we're entering a new era of champagne, and whether you like it or not, we don't really have a choice. But I think that the future of champagne is still bright.
While champagne is unique, are there any other sparkling region you find exciting?
Definitely. I think that today the quality level of sparkling wine in the world is higher than ever before. And of course, I mean, I think champagne is the best.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
But I think that's you can say that
Yeah.
objectively too, right? And
Yeah.
champagne is still the model for sparkling wines around the world. But I think that what's with wine in general, right? I think that what's interesting is to not copy a model, but to take inspiration from that and make something unique, right? So, for example, Pinot Noir, right? Burgundy is the model for Pinot Noir. It's not interesting in Oregon or Australia or California or whatever to make a copy of Burgundy.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is when you're inspired by Burgundy and you make something that's distinctively
Okay, sure.
Oregon,
Yeah.
right? That's distinctively like Santa Rita Hills,
Yeah.
or distinctively like Germany. And so, with sparkling wine, it's the same thing. It's boring to make a copy of champagne. What's really exciting is when you see like producers in Tasmania making something that's distinctive, there, or producers in England making something that's distinctively Essex, or the work that people are doing in like the Anderson Valley in California, or in Europe, like people like Brundelmeier and Schloss Gobelsberg making something that's distinctively Austrian, and this is what I like to see, and this is what I think is really exciting.
Okay, what is your desert island champagne?
Oh, that's hard to say. That's definitely hard to say because what I like about champagne is its diversity. And there are so many great producers. But maybe if I could, maybe historically, if I could go back in history and have be on a desert island with any wine, I might pick 1921 Moet.
Oh, how was it? I tested the 28, but I never tried to 21.
1921 Moet is a legendary one.
Could you explain about the 21 vintage?
Well, it was legendary vintage of
Better than 28?
of the time period. I mean, both were great.
Yeah, both great vintage. Yeah.
But so 1921 Moet was the first Dom Perignon, but 21 Moet was put into the Dom Perignon. It was transferred into the Dom Perignon bottle, and those have not aged so well.
Oh.
But when you get the original Moet bottle, that wine is magnificent.
Okay.
And it feels immortal. Like it certainly feels like a wine from a different era, but it feels like it will live forever. It's certainly one of the most legendary champagnes ever made.
I'm really looking forward to meet the 21. How about this?
This is an amazing wine.
Yeah.
Fred Savar's experiment with Menil, and from the great 19 vintage, he bought it only in Magnum, as it deserves.
Actually, the Prado is the specialist for Pinot Noir, but at this time,
I know
Chardonnay.
He makes pretty good Chardonnay too, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, we talk about the RM and NM. And the distinction between RM and NM producers is becoming less clear. How do you see that dynamic today?
I'm one of those people who has never paid much attention to RM and NM. I think that especially like maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was a big deal among consumers. People would say, "Oh, I only drink RM," which I think is a very nonsensical statement. I think if you only drink RM, you're missing out on half the world of champagne, right?
Sure.
Or even more. And as you say, today it's becoming even more complicated because the lines are getting blurred. Right? Many of the greatest RMs have become NM because in Champagne, land is very expensive, and we're talking millions of euros per hectare, and it's unavailable. Oftentimes because land is so restricted there that very comparatively few vineyards come up for sale. If you want to grow your business, it becomes very difficult to purchase vineyards. So a way that you can grow is to purchase grapes from people that you trust. Or I guess let's say when RMs begin to start a little negociant business, there are many ways you can go about it.
Okay.
Some people buy only from family members. I mean, this is a possibility. So in Champagne, of course, with this, in France, let's say, with this whole kind of method of inheritance, sometimes vineyards will be broken up, and they'll be owned by different family members. So you might then purchase grapes from your cousin, your uncle, your brother, and put this all together. So that's definitely a possibility. There are people like Savard, who want to explore different terroirs. So they have friends in other places that they grow grapes, and they'll purchase from them. And so that's really interesting because, as you say, Frédéric Savard is a Pinot Noir specialist in the village of Écueil, but now we get to see his expression of Le Mesnil-sur-Oger, Chardonnay, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So this becomes very exciting, for us to be able to see a different facet. I think very much like in Burgundy, there is this kind of rise of these micro-négociants now, and I think it makes it very interesting.
Okay, low dosage has become a strong trend, even among major house. What's your view on the pros and cons of this movement?
Well, I think that as a movement, it may be a little bit misguided, but just as a natural progression, it makes a lot of sense. So for me, I always think that dosage is the single most misunderstood aspect of champagne. Of course, we think of sugar as an additive, and we don't want any additives in our wine, right? Like the idea of putting sugar in your wine immediately sounds like an error, or it sounds like something that we don't want to do. Right? But the thing is that dosage exists in champagne not necessarily to, I mean, it certainly doesn't exist to make a wine sweet. And it's not even just for balance. Okay. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, champagne has very high acidity, so we need dosage to balance, we need sugar to balance that acidity. That's only partially, that's only part of the whole issue.
Okay.
Dosage, I always say that dosage in champagne is very much like salt in food. Right? We don't put salt in food just to make food salty. It actually opens up and expands other flavors, right? in a way that goes beyond just being salty. Right? Dosage functions in champagne the exact same way. It opens everything up. It opens up fruit. It opens up expression of terroir, soil character. The proper dosage transforms a champagne in a way that makes it more complete. Right? Okay. And so it's the winemaker's job to find the proper dosage, which is different for every champagne. There's no formula. Right? You can't say like, oh, well, 3 grams is best, or like 5 grams is best. Every wine is unique, and every wine needs a different dosage. So it's some champagnes need 7 grams, some champagnes need 3 grams, some champagnes need 0 grams. So it's up to the winemaker to determine where that falls. Of course, dosage levels have come down over the last 20 years. One, because champagnes are made with riper grapes now, so champagnes need less dosage. Also, just the preference of consumers has changed. I mean, more than 20, like let's say 40 years ago, people actually preferred a sweeter style of champagne, whereas as now, popular tastes have changed. I think the focus should be on the proper dosage. Okay. It should be what is the correct dosage for this wine. The focus should not be I want a low dosage or a no dosage champagne, right? Because then you fall into a trap where you're so obsessed about making a no dosage champagne that many producers will release a wine that's underdosed. Okay. See. And being underdosed is just as bad as being overdosed. Right? See. So really, the emphasis should be on what is the correct dosage for this wine. And so all the best producers, they do dosage trials. They'll take the same wine and they'll put like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then taste them blind and pick the best one. Pick the one where the dosage is properly balanced for that wine. And what's amazing is that when you do this exercise, when you find the correct dosage, the sugar seems to just disappear into the wine. You no longer taste sweetness. Sometimes, in fact, when the dosage is too low, the sugar will stick out. So let's say that the correct dosage for this wine is random number, like let's say it's 3 grams. So then at 3 grams, the sugar will disappear. At 2 grams, it actually tastes sweeter because you feel, you have the greater perception of sugar. It's very strange.
Yeah.
So when you taste blind, and if you're very honest about it, tasting these things blind, it's very instructive. You see how dosage works in a champagne, and you see where at the very perfect level of dosage, the sugar, one, it disappears into the wine, but then it expands all the components of the wine, and it makes it better, honestly.
Interesting. What factors influence the size and texture of bubbles in champagne?
This is a mysterious question because there are things that we have talked about in the past that we thought that we thought influenced bubbles, and it turns out that scientifically they're maybe not exactly correct. There are scientists who spend their whole lives studying this. There's a very famous scientist in France named Liem, who is the greatest bubble expert in the world, and he's basically devoted his entire career to studying this. But in the past we used to say that temperature of the cave, temperature of the cellars for second fermentation played a big role. Apparently now scientists are thinking that this is not necessarily true. I think soil has a big, we used to say that soil has a big impact. I still think that maybe this is true, that chalk contributes to finesse of bubbles. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so I really I only know what I read. But it's certainly true that in Champagne, you see that the highest quality wines, in the Champagne region, are known for a very fine mousse, right? For very precise bubbles, and that's something that you don't see in other regions of the world, right? Like you think, I mean, there are certainly great sparkling wines made in other regions of the world, but I think this really fineness of the mousse and this elegance and finesse is something that's very classically champenois. And you feel like that has to be linked to soil and climate in some way.
At the 샴페인서울, the audience seems notably younger than in New York. What's your impression of that?
Yeah, that's true. Many of the winemakers, remarked that the audience is relatively young in average age. I don't know why.
Because we are young.
Maybe it's just because Koreans stay younger for longer. I don't know. I don't know. But it's impressive. It's. I think that. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's cultural. Maybe. I mean, there could be economic factors. I don't know. Champagne, of course, is not the cheapest wine in the world. Right? It's expensive, and so you can understand why in places like the United States or in Europe, it's not always easy to afford champagne and to afford the the really best champagnes. But yeah, it's been very impressive to see the audience in Korea and the enthusiasm that a younger generation has for champagne.
Okay, organizing such a major event must come with challenges. What's the hardest part?
Well, I think that I think probably the hardest part about an event like 샴페인서울 is the logistics, and so I think I really have to congratulate the team for all the hard work that they do. It's I think for you and for me being being kind of the founders and organizers, we have the creative jobs, we have the intellectual jobs, but really it's our team that does all the hard work, and so we really have to thank them.
Thank you, my team. Thank you, our team. And which champagnes was the most memorable for you this year?
There were so many. It was really fun at the gala dinner to see the producers pulling out all these special wines. I mean, I remember Veuve Clicquot brought that 96 Cave Privé in Magnum. That was great. Pierre Paillard brought that Jeroboam of Matalet, which was incredible. But everybody brought something special. It was very generous of the producers, and it was a lot of fun. And then of course the guests brought so many special wines. I mean, so many people brought Salos and Dom Perignon and Krug. And
I don't know why Salos.
It's amazing.
The allocation for South Korea. It's very small, but everybody is Salos.
It all gets drunk at Champagne Soul. It was amazing.
Among the event at Champagne Soul 2025, which one stood out to you the most?
Well, unfortunately, because there were so many dinners and so many events, I wasn't able to go to all of them because they happened at the same time, right? So I was only able to attend kind of a select few, but the ones that I did go to I thought were very, very special. Having that Salos dinner at La Yonne was an incredible event, and Anselm was so generous with the wines that he brought, and the menu was so great, and so to be able to pair Salos with this kind of food. And such spectacularly refined Korean cuisine was amazing, and I really enjoyed that.
What are your thoughts on the concept of the wine stabilization? And the producers often recommend allowing the wine to last and stabilize for at the least month or two, especially after long ship period. However, some argue that since the chemical composition of the wine doesn't actually change, stabilization is not really necessary. What is your perspective on this issue?
Well, I think that wine is more than just its chemical composition, right? I think there's still a lot that science doesn't really understand about wine. Wine is an extremely complex liquid, right? It behaves in ways that other things don't. Like why does wine age? Even just a simple question like that is kind of bizarre, right? Because orange juice doesn't age, or what other liquids gomdang doesn't age. So why does wine age for years and years? I think that you certainly see the effects of transport on wine, right? You see that wine gets kind of jet lagged, or it gets sick when it gets transported, and it needs some, like us, it needs some time to recover. And so there might be you might analyze the liquid scientifically and say well, there should be no reason for this, but when you taste it, it's clearly evident. So I always think that transport changes wine. I guess I get to see it a lot because I live in Champagne, so oftentimes I taste the same wines there, and then I taste them in New York or in Seoul or somewhere else in the world, and you see how the wines are different. They're not necessarily better or worse, but oftentimes they are different.
Okay, I see.
And transport, certainly, you see that when you wait 6 months or 12 months, the wine definitely recovers, and it becomes more expressive, it becomes more harmonious. And also Champagne, just in general terms, Champagne does very well with time. All champagnes need a little bit of age, right? So even basic entry-level non-vintage champagne, it's always better 12 months after release or 24 months after release anyway, right?
Yeah, right.
And then so regardless of transport or not, the wine is going to benefit from that time. So I think that that letting a wine sit after transport is always a very good idea.
Okay, finally, Peter, what does champagne mean to you personally?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I've been working with champagne for 30 years now, and so I guess it's become part of my life. You know, and so champagne is of course a wine, but to me it's maybe more a place and a culture and people. You know, so I live there, so it's become, you know, kind of inseparable, like you know, for me and my life. But yeah, I guess one of the things that I like about, you know, events like 샴페인서울 or La Fête du Champagne is that we can bring this culture to people around the world, you know, so that champagne becomes more than just a beverage or a name on a label. You know, when we can bring these producers, you know, and you know, to our clients and to our guests, and show them, you know, show them this culture of champagne, and show them, you know, bring a little bit of that place, you know, to them, that becomes very rewarding.
오늘 어떻게 재밌게 보셨는지 모르겠습니다. 제 오른쪽에 오랜만에 피터하고 이렇게 촬영을 해보니까 또 이야기를 사실 어제도 하루 종일 같이 있어서 둘이 와인 이야기밖에 안 해요. 근데도 오늘도 제가 궁금한 것들 몇 가지 추려서 한번 해봤는데 영상 어떠셨나 모르겠습니다. 저는 또 다음 영상에서 찾아뵙겠습니다. 지금까지 와인 마신 나톰 이준혁이었습니다. 감사합니다.